lifeless. There was blood everywhere, some of it pouring out of their eyes, their mouths, and their chests. My name is Olga, and I remember vividly this warm February night in the early 2000s when the scariest thing in my life happened to me. I'm still in therapy from it because of the nightmares due to the post-traumatic stress disorder. I was driving my sister, Ingrid, and we were coming from a late-night party. We were tired and hungry from a small room party that ran out of food pretty early, but had an abundance of alcohol. I had sobered up an hour ago, while Ingrid was practically passed out in the back. I was confident enough to drive, thinking that my blood alcohol level was low enough, such that if we were stopped, I could pass a sobriety test. I asked Ingrid if she wanted to drive through to a nearby McDonald's. She said, mumbling, "Yeah, sure." In my city, there were several 24-hour McDonald's branches, which really was our only option at 2 in the morning. So we drove halfway across town into the restaurant. We arrived there, nothing out of the ordinary. There was only one really run-down old truck in the entire parking area. Nothing notable, really. There was no line of vehicles going through the drive-thru window. This was great. I was eager to get my food and go home. I drive up the ordering area, opened my window, and spoke into the microphone attached to the menu. "Hello, I'd like to order a Big Mac meal and a quarter-pounder meal, please." I waited for a response. There was none. I spoke a little louder. "Hi there. Sorry if you didn't hear me. I'd like to order a Big Mac meal and a quarter-pounder meal, please." Just eerie silence. Ingrid got fed up with this, rose from her apparent slumber, and quickly pulled down her window. She spoke loudly, almost shouting, "Hey! We really need to get home, babe! Can you sell me my burger, please?" No answer. "Maybe they're closed," Ingrid said, but the lights were open. Odd. I drove the car to the window where they give you your order. It was strangely wide open, but there was no worker visible inside. "Weird. Maybe they're short on staff," I remember saying. Ingrid answered, "Yeah, let's just pop in and order and be done with this crap." I agreed. We drove the car back to the parking lot, parallel parked to the old truck. We walked to the McDonald's as I'm trying to keep Ingrid from falling down. I even asked her if she preferred to stay in the car, but she was pretty insistent that she was fine. We walked into the door of the restaurant and was greeted by the most horrific thing I've ever seen in my entire life. The members of the staff were all sprawled all over the floor. They lifeless. There was blood everywhere, some of it pouring out of their eyes, their mouths, and their chests. It was the scene of what looked like a massacre. On the front of the restaurant, a man was slumped over, just in front of the cash register, whose contents clearly had been emptied. We were paralyzed, stunned. Then Ingrid let out a large scream. I said, "We should get out of here and call the police." My words were interrupted by the unmistakable sound of a gun cocking. I turned around and saw, just outside the restaurant, there was a man and a woman, both wearing face coverings. Ingrid turned around, hands raised, and begged, "Please, we didn't see your faces. We didn't see anything." The man didn't look convinced and pointed the gun at her. Then, Ingrid said it.
"My friend is pregnant. Please spare us. We won't report to the police, we promise."
I was gobsmacked. I wasn't pregnant. The woman asked me if it was true that I was pregnant. And I said yes. A month. And I was about to get married to my fiancé. All made up on the spot from the drunk ramblings of my friend. The woman told the man not to do it. He argued that we might report them, but I swore on my baby's life that we would not do that. The baby that didn't exist in the first place. The woman told me that she had to do this because she had her own babies at home, twins, and they didn't know how to feed them. In my mind, this was a pathetic attempt to justify the evil that they have done, but I played along and pretended like I was on their side. There was a tense silence before the man decided to lower his weapon and let us leave. I thanked them, and we walked away, still shaking. Ingrid is now fully sobered up. We get to the car and drive away from the place. While on the dark road to the highway, both of us were in tears, traumatized from what we had experienced. And then, the bright light hit my eyes. The truck was running after us, speeding behind us. The windows were rolled down, and the woman with crazed eyes was shouting,
"You have no ring!"
It clicked immediately that if I had a fiancé, I would be wearing an engagement ring. And maybe it didn't sink in for her at the time, but she realized it after that I wasn't wearing one. I couldn't really see the truck clearly, but it did look like it was gaining on us. Then, part of my windshield in front of me exploded. There was a bullet hole on it. I had to do it. I had to take a risk to save our lives. I swerved on the opposite lane into the oncoming traffic. The truck went ahead as we dodged the incoming cars and vans. Convinced that we would die, I spun the car around and managed to turn it the other way, and we sped off into the opposite direction. We looked for the nearest police station and reported everything. Fortunately, drunk Ingrid, surprisingly reliable, was able to take note of the truck's plate number. The two murderers were eventually arrested in their small tenement home. The woman didn't only have one pair of twins. She had 11 kids, all of which are now going into foster care. A year later, they were sentenced to life in prison. I still haven't partied at night. I can't even drive anymore. My life will never be the same, even though it's been so long. But despite that, I am thankful for the random, drunk, quick-thinking friend of mine. If it wasn't for her, I'd probably be one of the bodies that they found in that McDonald's that cold February night. My name is Allison, and I worked as a cashier in our small town's McDonald's when I was 18. But I don't think I can ever step in that restaurant again though. Not the fault of the business, but because it might trigger some incredibly frightening memories for me. I learned the hard way that sometimes one simple stupid choice can turn your life into a living nightmare. And this is what happened on that fateful winter day. I started my shift like any other. Breakfast is usually the busiest time of the day. By the time we reach mid-afternoon, the crowds become much more manageable. A nice young man, dressed in pretty high-end clothes, walked into the store and was really taking his time to order. He asked me what my recommendations were. That's not a question we usually get here. I hear that more in restaurants than in fast food joints, where people usually have a clear idea on what they want to begin with. I recommended the Big Mac meal. He agreed. He was a really charming man, and he complimented how clean our McDonald's branch was. Again, not a thing I usually hear in this place. Still a bit amused by this conversation, I let my guard down and stupidly answered his next question. "Is Nia working today?" Without thinking, I replied that she was doing the night shift. He thanked me for that and he just left. He told me I can have the Big Mac meal. I was just baffled. I didn't know what to make of it. Was this guy a friend? A jealous boyfriend? I know I had to ask Nia before I go home. Nia arrived early that night as I was just about to wrap my shift. She didn't look like her normal, happy, glowing self. She looked haggard and sad. I asked her if she was okay, and at first she responded that she was fine. I told her that a man was looking for her this afternoon. Her eyes widened, her mouth open. She looked absolutely terrified. I asked her what was wrong. She replied that she had just broken up with her boyfriend of 3 years a month ago and also has a restraining order on him. He had managed to track her. It was an intensely abusive relationship. It was not just psychological and emotional, but also physical. The boyfriend was a controlling narcissist who wanted to regiment every move she makes. He gets into almost a rabid rage when he sees her with another guy, even her own family. He was truly unhinged. I immediately knew I messed up by telling him that Nia was having her shift that night. She was understanding. She said that she will try to ask the other workers there for help in case he shows up. I asked her to call the police immediately since she already has a restraining order. I gave her my number in case she needed any help from me, and I told her that I will do whatever it takes to keep her safe. She could tell that I was feeling guilty about the entire thing, but she assured me that everything will be fine and that she doesn't blame me for anything. That night, I couldn't really sleep. I was staring at my phone, waiting for an update. At just around midnight, I called her to check if everything was fine. She answered it and told me that she couldn't really talk because it was getting busy and that she was doing well and there is no sign of the guy. She also said she will keep me posted. I had a really bad feeling. But then, I told myself it was probably just me being guilty and paranoid. The next day, I checked in for work as usual. I was smiling at customers while working the till. Then, an irate middle-aged lady comes in. She doesn't seem to be having a good day and had a general Karen vibe. She immediately went to me and said she would like to speak to the manager. Wow, this lady is something else. I haven't even taken her order or spoke to her, and she already wanted to speak to the manager? My manager, Tony, went up to the counter to entertain her. She whined about how there was an incredibly foul smell coming from behind the store. Tony explains to her that it's where our trash bins are, and we will go check. In our country, it's those large smell green bins. Tony asked one of the female crew to follow this lady to the back. I've never had a customer complain about smell before, so this was something new to me. A few minutes later, I was taking the order of an elderly couple when I hear screaming from outside.
Call the police! Oh my god!
They shouted. The screaming kept on going. Curious customers, including the couple I was speaking to, also rushed out, and then more screams. I walked out of the store too, leaving another guy to man the counter. There was a small group of people, all huddled, covering their noses. I looked down at the bin, and I saw it. Poor Neha, slaughtered, murdered, thrown into the dumpster. I couldn't believe it. I felt like I died a little inside. This was my fault, I thought immediately, and I just broke down crying. I failed her, all because of my one stupid decision to not protect my co-worker. The police knew immediately who the primary suspect was. They caught him in a parking lot, and instead of surrendering, the bastard shot back, perhaps to end his own life, knowing full well that the police will shoot him. He's gone now, but the pain for me is just beginning. I've been in therapy for 2 years now. I still couldn't process the guilt and grief. Ladies, don't share the location of other women to random men. That's actually the lesson I learned the hard way, which is why I'm sharing my story today.